U.S. President Joe Biden announcing that the U.S. military has achieved its goals in Afghanistan. And according to him, America's longest war is ending. He said that the military mission in Afghanistan will conclude on August the 31st. But he also did say that U.S. support for the Afghan people will endure. He went on to say that Afghan leaders themselves will have to come together, and countries in the region should step up efforts to bring about a political solution for the country. On the Taliban, he was questioned about the Taliban by the reporters, and he did say that the Taliban is at its strongest militarily since 2001. But the Taliban takeover of the country, he believes, is not inevitable in the wake of this U.S. troop withdrawal. Let's bring in our White House correspondent, Kimberly Halkett, joining us from Washington, D.C. So the president is very much defending his withdrawal plans in Afghanistan, Kimberly.
Yeah, you did a nice job of summing up the speech, and I think I want to highlight on a couple of the points that he made, because there was some news in this speech. You noted the August 31st withdrawal date. That is a moving up of what he announced in April, when he said, in fact, all of the U.S. soldiers would be out by September 11th, the 20th anniversary of the September 11th attacks in not only Washington, but also New York City. So that is notable. He did not give an explanation for moving up that date, only that that is now the new date. Some of what the president had to say is not much different than what he said in April. He certainly underscored once again why he was making the decision he was, and outlining the enormous cost that American soldiers have paid in trying to ensure that there was not another attack on the U.S. homeland. Not only the casualties that number in the thousands, but also the wounded and those whose scars may be mental in terms of the PTSD that they're suffering. That is even an untold number. Thanking those service members for their service. But I think some of the biggest news moments of the speech came in the question and answer session that the president held afterwards. Because on the one hand, he talked about how his Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, will be continuing diplomatic efforts to see that there is a negotiated peace effort in the region, but at the same time saying that one of the parties, the Taliban, that is a part of that effort, the U.S. president was asked whether or not he trusted them, and he was very emphatic when he said, no, he does not. So it almost appears as if he's undermined that process from the podium. The other big headline in all of that is that the U.S. president has been very clear that despite dire predictions from security experts, members of Congress, former members of the administration past, there have been these predictions that the Taliban will, in light of the gains that have been made, take over potentially Kabul, other major cities. The U.S. president emphatic in saying that he does not believe that will happen, that this is because of the training that has been provided by the United States, the ongoing support that will be provided, and also the enormous amount of money and investment that the United States has made. So the U.S. president and commander-in-chief striking an optimistic tone, even as there are grave concerns about the future of Afghanistan.
Kimberly Halkett, thank you so much for that wrap-up from Washington, D.C. Let's bring in once again David Sedney, who's a former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Central Asia. Thanks so much for sticking around. Just to pick up on something important that Kimberly was mentioning a moment ago, why do you think the president has now said that the military mission will conclude on August 31st as opposed to September 11th, which was the original date?
Well, the administration has gotten a lot of criticism for the decision, the process, and the time. And tying the end of the military mission to September 11th was seen as really a blatant political ploy with no basis in reality. So making that shift to August 31st is designed to get rid of the damage that the administration caused. So they shot themselves in the foot, and now they're binding up the wound on that side. But otherwise, as your correspondent said, President Biden pretty much stuck to that decision, didn't change anything, did make a number of semi-promises for Afghans who may have worked with the U.S. government, but he also ducked a lot of questions. He also sounded confused and bumbling at times.
And he also said that the Taliban is at its strongest militarily since 2001. But then he believes that the Taliban takeover of the country is not inevitable. I mean, what do you think he's basing that on?
He's basing it on hope. He doesn't want the Taliban to take over, so he's adjusting reality, trying to adjust reality to what he hopes. And then there is, in fact, a lot of analytical views inside and outside the U.S. government that the Taliban could take over. And the biggest reason is this abandonment of Afghanistan by the United States. There's very little in what the president just said now to give hope to the Afghan people, hope to the Afghan military, or hope to the Afghan government that the United States will stick by them in coming months and years.
How do you make sense of 20 years of fighting to, according to the U.S., take out the Taliban? That's why they went into Afghanistan. And then watching the Taliban gain more and more ground at the end. How do you make sense of that?
Well, of course, the United States did not go into Afghanistan to defeat the Taliban. As President Biden said, the United States went into Afghanistan to get Osama Bin Ladin and to stop terrorism in the U.S. The United States never actually declared war on the Taliban. The United States never actually designated the Taliban as a terrorist organization. That's why it's so interesting that President Biden was so emphatic that he doesn't trust the Taliban, while at the same time saying he trusts the agreement that the Taliban signed with the former administration. So, again, there's a lot of confusion here. I want to make one very serious correction. President Biden said repeatedly that Afghanistan has never been unified in its entire history. That's not true. Afghanistan has been a unified country, has been a country that's been at peace in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. Before the Cold War, before the United States and the Soviet Union started fighting over Afghanistan, Afghanistan was a small, quiet, peaceful country. So the United States and the rest of the world have a lot to do with what happened in Afghanistan. But what President Biden said about Afghanistan never being a unified country is just not true.
David Sedney, we'll leave it there, but we thank you very much for joining us and giving us your point of view.
All right, thank you.